So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Social Enterprise Summit. And I think this is one of the very first time that we are talking about rural issues. I think before we kind of quite focused on some of the city area, and this time for a change we talk about rural SEs. I think that's an interesting topic, and we are very glad that we actually invited friends from the region. So we have people from India, we have speakers from the Philippines, and also speakers from Japan to share with us their experience in the rural area and then the development of the rural social enterprises. So may I introduce myself first? My name is Pui Fong. I'm running a social enterprise called Fair Taste in Hong Kong, and I do quite import a lot of fair trade products from the region. We actually have import some very beautiful basket from the Philippines, which using a similar kind of material, backers, that Ms. Hashimoto will be talking about in the later. And we also import tea and also cashew from India. So we kind of, that's good. We will have more understanding and more learning about the agriculture franchising in India later. So that's really great. That's really great. And also in Japan, we also receive a lot of very quality fair trade products. We've seen them in Japan. So I somehow feel that I'm quite close to them in this way. So hopefully we'll have a very enjoyable sharing and discussion later in the afternoon. So perhaps let me briefly introduce the three speakers. So first of all, we will have Professor Singh from India, and he is the chairperson of the Center of Management in Agriculture, and also and from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. So, and then secondly, we have Ms. Yasmin Gatal-Hashimoto. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce all the names perfectly. And she herself is a social entrepreneur in the Philippines, and from the Lingo Documentation Center in the Philippines. And then lastly, we have Professor Makino, and she's the Makino, sorry. So she's the professor from the College of Foreign Study, Kansai Gaidai University. So that they will all be talking about, their experience and some of the framework. So we'll introduce them one by one. So first of all, I would like to invite Professor Singh to discuss about your interesting franchising idea in the agricultural sector. So please, I will give the floor, the stage to you. Thank you.
This is next page. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, friends. What I'm going to share with you is a unique case of one application of franchising model of doing business in the agricultural context of India, not only Indian context, but also in a state or province of India, which is one of the poorest, which is Bihar in eastern India. And this agri startup I'm going to talk about is set up by two young boys who did their bachelor's in technology from the Indian Institute of Technology. So there is plenty of interest in agriculture and agribusiness in India these days by entrepreneurs. At the same time, when Indian agriculture sector is going through a big crisis. You would have heard of agrarian distress in India. You would have heard of farmers' suicides in India. So it's a very interesting situation that the sector is in crisis from the farmer's perspective. But at the same time, there's a lot of business interest in the sector in order to change things. So what I'm going to share with you is this case study we have carried out as part of the larger study on how we can use new models, and that to combining the commerce and the cause. They're trying to do social good while doing good business. So business and social cause do not necessarily don't go together. So you can combine the two and still make things happen. That's what I will focus on. So to set the things in perspective, Indian farmers are really very, very small compared to any other country's farmers. 85% of Indian farmers are operating less than 2 hectares of land, and 60% of it may be dry, that they may not have irrigation facility for doing agriculture, and they may be growing one crop in a year, and they suffer from problems of lower yield of crops, higher cost of production, which is increasing because increasingly Indian agriculture is becoming market dependent. They have to buy things from the market instead of self-provisioning, and price realization that global markets, agriculture prices are down. India government provides some price support for some commodities, but not all. So because of this, the farmers are in trouble. And a lot of small farmers are not part of any of the modern arrangements in agriculture which have become available because of globalization and liberalization of the sector. You may talk about contract farming, you may talk about direct purchase by food supermarkets, which are many in India now, domestic ones. The global ones are allowed to do only wholesaling, not retailing, like Metro and Tesco and so on are there, but they're in the wholesale business, not a retail business of food. And therefore, there is a need to look at the role of institutions and institutional innovations, taking agriculture sector's problem as social problems which concern people's livelihoods, which concern use of natural resources, which are being overused, depleted, not renewed, and so on, and more importantly, looking at the viability of such enterprises in farming or agribusiness. So I would share with you the experience of franchising as an institutional innovation. The reality is that nobody has until recently talked about the use of franchising mechanism in taking services to the rural people or farmers, either in terms of selling to them or buying from them. So how do we look at the role of agri-franchising, theoretically, conceptually? What are the existing cases of agri-franchising in India, including other Asian countries? And how do we examine the performance of such enterprises in terms of inclusiveness, effectiveness, and their impact? So I'll be sharing a case study which is based on a model of an NGO. It's called Farms and Farmers, trying to work with farmers and also setting up a private company called Green Evolution Agri Private Limited to do the business part of it. In India, the NGOs are not allowed to do business. They cannot transact business. So you have to have a private setup to do business with any entity. And then we draw lessons from that in terms of what is the potential of this kind of institutional innovation in helping small farmers in a context like India. I don't need to spend time on saying how institutional innovations are important, because there is a widespread prevalence of market failure in agriculture in countries like India, both on the input side, that farmers even today do not get adequate availability of good quality inputs at right price at right time. So even if they want to do good farming, you don't have agri inputs available in local areas. And there are issues of spurious products, high prices, and non-availability, because a lot of government of the state in even making companies deliver products like fertilizers at local areas, in local areas. There are issues of the market side, on the output side, that farmers do not get markets for certain products. There are frequent gluts. There are issues of right price, issues of fair treatment in the markets, and so on. And there is interlocking of markets, that a lot of farmers borrow to do their agriculture, because of which they are tied to certain traders to sell their produce to them or buy their inputs on credit and therefore sell their output to those entities. So even if they are offered certain price support by the government, they are not able to get it because they can't sell to government agencies, they have to sell to these private, they're interlocked. And more importantly, the collectivization of farmers, small farmers in India is very, very poor. Only about 2% farmers are members of any farmer association, and less than 5% had any membership, any self-help group. So they are trying to fend for themselves individually. There are very few collectives. It's much worse in some other states which are agriculturally very grown, but not necessarily collectivized adequately. So there are issues of how do we improve farmer remuneration in the presence of such market failure, including some failure of the state in terms of reaching. So why I'm treating this as a case of innovation? Because implementation of something new, improved in products, processes, or marketing or organic method can be called innovation. And it need not be completely new. The application of existing idea in a new context can also be called innovation. And when we are talking about innovation, we can talk about substantial innovations, which could be disruptive in change, bringing completely new systems of functioning, or it could be cumulative or increase the gradual change in terms of add-ons and so on. But institutions are very important because they really set the rules of the game, how business will be done, how people will buy and sell, and they are about human interactions. Therefore, the efficiency and productivity all depends on what kind of institutions you have and how innovative they are or they could be. The institution could also be path dependent or could be innovative in their functioning. So what we are going to talk about is the institution of franchising as an innovation in the agriculture sector, where this is something new which has been tried. So I would basically not spend time on this because there's so much about institution which one can talk about in agriculture. But innovation generally take place outside the formal context of policy and practice. So many times it's not recognized for some time. People who bring this innovation have to struggle because others are not convinced about its utility and effectiveness. So you need to really give some time to this kind of process to happen in order to understand its significance and implications. And there have been many cases on the market side of agriculture in India in terms of public-private partnership, where the state agencies have worked with private parties, whether it's in medicine plants which are exported from India, or it's the fruits and vegetable retailing in India, or the basmati rice again being exported from India, or grapes, which is a big success story now, or the issue of extension to farmers, providing information and technology to farmers at the local level. So the many state agencies have joined hands with private companies in the past. So that is a known story. And there are a lot of informal institutional innovations. For example, second-hand tractor markets, where some parts of India have over-tractorization now, that a lot of farmers who were not able to use a tractor viably have, for various reasons, bought tractors which are being sold in the second-hand market now, completely organized and run locally by local agents, no role of state, no role of government. Similarly, we have irrigation tubewell companies which are also run informally. We have custom rentals in agriculture machinery now. Farmers who do not have machines and tractors, they are being given out this on rent. So we have also NGOs which are working with private companies to provide microfinance. So all this is about market-based informal institutional innovations. And there could be many more examples of this. But what I would try to go to is that if you're looking at franchising, which has been used in the food service sector across the globe and even in India, has not been used in the farm sector or the rural sector. So this could be business format franchising that you could specify to the franchisee, the franchise giving company. Franchisor can specify to the franchisee that this is how you would run my business, and you would get certain benefits from my side in terms of profit sharing or whatever. But there is a conceptual framework which says that agriculture meets all the necessary and sufficient condition to apply franchising mechanism. So this is very interesting paper I'm sharing with you, because a lot of people think that agriculture, since it's scattered, farmers are small, scattered in rural areas, you cannot use franchising. But since it is scattered, there is a need for local agents or franchisees to deliver services or to work with farmers. So there is all the conditions, necessary and sufficient conditions which are met in agriculture for the implementation of a mechanism or institutional innovation like franchising. So this I can come back to if needed. But what we are looking at is that we look at the comparative advantage of franchising compared to the conventional distribution system or the company-operated, company-owned, company-operated model, COCO model. In India, some of the companies have tried COCO model, where the companies own and run their own stores to work with farmers to buy and sell. So compared to that, franchising scores high on all these dimensions of distribution effectiveness and efficiency. And therefore, there's a complete case for use of this kind of mechanism. And some of the multinationals like Syngenta are using this in neighboring countries. Pakistan, where has also a franchising arrangement there. There are other companies which are using. So franchising is coming in the agri-business sector, especially on the agri-input selling. In fact, Syngenta has converted all its distribution stores into franchisee stores in the past. Similarly, there are global NGOs like Care International which have used micro-franchising to work with the dairy farmers to supply them dairy inputs and veterinary services in Bangladesh. So there have been some cases of this, but not many. In India, we have been having scattered experiments in terms of many cooperatives which are state-funded and state-run, and many private players using franchising to deliver agri-input services to farmers, and sometimes also buying farmers' output through the franchisees. And what I'm going to share with is about an agri startup, a new company which was set up only a few years ago, and sharing its arrangements. So this is a farms and farmers NGO, as I said earlier, set up by two young people trained in Indian Institute of Technology. And then they have another arm, commercial arm called Green Agri-Evolution Private Limited, which is the one which implements franchising with pharma. These are the photos of their outlets. These are called dehats, which basically means rural. So dehats are the outlets which deliver service to farmers through a franchisee. They work with 4,000 farmer members, and farmers have to become member by paying 200 rupees. And each franchise store caters to farmers within 10 or 12 kilometer radius by doing even soil sampling, crop selection help, and technical support, other than selling the agri inputs or buying farmer produce and further on selling to larger processors and exporters. So this is their number of outlets. They have 11 outlets now across different parts of the state called Bihar in eastern India, and the number of farmers they work with across number of villages and the major crops they deal with in terms of supplying of inputs and buying back their farm produce. We interviewed 5 of them, 5 of their franchisees who had small land holdings, 2 to 3 acres, sometimes even just 1 acre, and education basically graduates or undergraduates. So, and these are farmer survey we conducted in terms of judging the effectiveness of this kind of mechanism to deliver services to benefits to farmers. So we looked at all categories of farmers, marginal farmers, small farmers, semi-medium farms, and medium farmers across 2 districts. So the model is that basically the franchisee has to invest about $300 to begin with to become a franchisee with this company, and they train them for 3 months in terms of business format of delivering services, how to run this outlet. Profits are shared, 75 going to the franchisee and 25 to the franchise owner. And each franchisee runs only 1 outlet, so there's no competition between franchises or overlap in the same area. Most are operated from their own premises, either owned or rented, and they cover 15 to 20 villages or 500 farmers. That is the expectation. And prices of products, of course, decided by the franchisor, and they are monitored. They are delivered these products weekly or bi-weekly. There is also product exchange and movement across dehats when there is shortage in one of them. And all the promotion is done by the dehat operator, that you have to promote the market for these products, which are mostly, actually they don't deal with many chemical products. Most of the products are sustainable, organic or bio products. That is their, so you have to have certain conditions fulfilled to become a franchisee. All that is mentioned here. And farmers should be organized into members of a group, and the group in turn works with the franchisee. And you are supposed to hold weekly, fortnightly meetings and approach the company for resolving some of the problem which you may not be able to deal at your level. So all this is about what franchisees have to do as part of the formal agreement which franchisee has to sign with the franchisor. So what we found is that most of the farmers are marginal or small farmers, and since the Bihar state itself has large predominance of small farmers, in fact 92% of Bihar's farmers are less than 2 hectare operators. But dehat farmers in general were slightly larger than their non-dehat counterpart. We compared the dehat and non-dehat farmers in order to know whether dehat is doing anything different compared to farmers buying from other sources. So they were slightly bigger farmers in terms of land holding and operating, and they were also cultivating more area under high value crops, because this agri startup is promoting new crops, high value crops, which are meant for markets, export or domestic. So they were into more high value crops compared to their non-dehat counterparts. Yeah, more than half of the farmers bought farm inputs on credit, despite this new arrangement that credit is what makes farming happen or doesn't happen. So they were buying still on credit, half of them. And 60% were using both credit and cash. And most of them were, as I said earlier, marginal small farmers. Only 11% farmers reported shortage of agriculture inputs, and major shortage was that of seeds. Now this is interesting, because in other areas people report a lot of shortage of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides, but here seed, because they were bringing new seeds for the local areas, so farmers very much interested in getting more of seed. And more than 80% farmers of dehat farmers were aware of the company behind dehat, this GAPL or F&F, and even non-dehat farmers, majority of them knew about dehat, and 46% visited the Haat outlet, but they didn't buy from there because they had certain other perceptions about the company. Of those who visited, 1/3 found the Haat products as spurious. So non-members had certain other perceptions about the franchisee products. 10 to 15, 16% could not find the products they visited for. 43% of the farmers had their soil tested through the Dehat, and 46% of the farmers had a membership of the Dehat farmer group. And large proportion of that was again marginal and small farmers. More than 93% farmers reported an increase in yield because of the newer seeds or better quality seeds supplied by the franchisee. 9% reported a cut in cost of production, because increasing cost of cultivation is an issue. So the Dehat was able to lower the cost of cultivation of these farmers. And 20% farmers reported that the Dehat could help them in crop selection. And seed was the primary reason that farmers associated the Dehat, because seed is what makes the crop better in terms of higher yield and lower cost of production along with extension. So this is what the most important intervention is. So some of the details of the findings, but I will basically come down to the lessons. One, that there is a lot of confusion in India about distinction between a franchisee and exclusive dealer. A lot of the companies I mentioned earlier, the government run cooperatives and others, are calling it a franchise, but basically they're treating their local partners as exclusive dealers and offering them commissions on sales and so on, rather than anything else. So you have to really look at franchisee as one step higher partner in your business rather than exclusive dealer. We need more direct franchising, because a lot of the companies which are bigger in scope, they have franchisees and sub-franchisees to reach the farmers, which doesn't work because you have too many layers in between to reach the farmer effectively. Whereas this kind of smaller agri startups are directly working with franchisees, and franchisees are located at the village or town level, not district level. Extension plus model is needed because farmers need a lot of awareness and information about new inputs and new markets, and alongside that, delivery of inputs and marketing outlets. You need to pick up local entrepreneurs and invest in them. You don't need to bring people from outside to do business in local area. You have local matriculates or undergrads or graduates who are willing to work, do new businesses in the farm and allied sectors. Need to work with them. You need to bring value-added services like contract farming through franchising, because people need new markets. So you need to bring new markets to farmers, which some of these entities are able to do because they understand modern markets. Local collective like producer company, India has a law for the last 10 years now where 10 or more farmers can come together and set up a company under the Companies Act, which is known as Farmer Producer Company. You will do business like a company legally, but you will operate on cooperative principles. So it's not under cooperative law, it's under company law. So that is happening now. We have over 2,000 such producer companies now. This can help the spread of franchising because these are more legal and larger entities which can undertake this kind of investments as a franchisee and deliver their services. Policy incentives are completely missing, not only for agri-franchising, but I said in the morning, even for social enterprise, there's no incentive in India. Officially, there's no act, no law which promotes social enterprise in India. So what we are basically saying is that agri-franchising has a lot of potential and promise for agricultural sector, agricultural development. We need to look at this more carefully and promote this in the form of social enterprise, where local NGOs and local agri startups can play this role. It can really resolve the last mile delivery problems, reaching the farmers effectively and in an inclusive manner, especially small farmers. This can do the job, and it has lower cost of operation than the COCO model. A lot of big companies and supermarkets are trying COCO model in India. They have failed badly because you cannot run this kind of high cost model with local farmers which are scattered, which are small and have small ticket size. So you have to really look at locally adapted solutions like franchising to do this. This also builds your local entrepreneurial base and social capital and promotes more inclusive development. So in every sense of the term, this is the way to go in taking development to local areas, to local farmers and local rural people. So I would end up saying that agri-franchising works. We need to sort of focus on it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Singh. Well, actually, I think it's a very on-the-ground help to the farmers. As far as I understand, the farmers' suicide rates in India is actually very high because the farmers actually have to borrow the money and then do the agriculture, and then by the end maybe they can't sell their products at a very good price, and then they fall into debt and in order to avoid the debts being passed to their families, and they have to, choose that way, and which is very, very sad. So this on the ground help, I think, is very innovative and also very, very helpful. Thank you. And later on, we will have more time for questions and discussions. So next, I would like to invite Ms. Yasmin Gatal-Hashimoto, and she will be talking about tapping a cultural heritage social entrepreneur in the Asian market. So, and I think there are lots of artisans in Philippines and hand weave, or making a lots of very beautiful handcraft and with their very rich cultural heritage. And now she will be sharing with us her experience in the Philippines, and also how it can be a model, or how it can, resonance in other parts of Asia. Thank you very much. Please come to the stage.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Yasmin Hashimoto from the Philippines, and I'm very honored to be here and have this opportunity to be able to share with you my experiences of working with indigenous women in southern Philippines. So my topic is tapping a cultural heritage and social entrepreneurship with the indigenous women in the Philippines. So why culture and indigenous women? Well, mainly because we have a large number of indigenous peoples in the Philippines, and this results of a rich variety of cultures, traditions, and practices, as well as end products or stuff that these indigenous women produce. So they have products that by tradition they can claim as their own, or have been identified as theirs. So for instance, we have a group of weavers, and they have their own product, and everyone in the Philippines knows that these products are made by this group of by this indigenous group. So the choice of focusing mainly on women, aside from the it's generally how do you call it, like accepted that they're more marginalized, is that because they're mainly involved in the production of this product that we're involved in in our social enterprise. So, and particularly in the actual weaving, the weaving process. So though their tasks are generally considered as the soft ones, because the men are mostly involved in the backbreaking tasks, such as the harvesting and then the delivery of the finished products. Most the women's tasks are usually, at least in this particular social enterprise, are not as strenuous. Like, so but they're very tedious activities, like the tying the threads and the dyeing process for the cloth. And then so I'm working with a group of Tiboli women. This is one of the major indigenous groups in the Philippines. They're mostly found in Mindanao. So as you can see in the map, it's almost down there in the southernmost part of the Philippines. And on the right side, you'll see that Lake Cebu. That's where, that's actually the heartland of, or considered the heartland of the Tiboli group. There are other indigenous groups also found or who are living in Lake Cebu, and these include the Tirurais, the Ubos, and the Manobos. But I'm working with the Tibolis. So the Tiboli women, or the Tibolis in general, they're famed for their weaving skills, as well as brass casting and beadwork. They actually rose to, they gained prominence after a master weaver from Lake Cebu was awarded. She received the 1998 National Living Treasure Award, or locally known as Gawad sa Manlilikha ng Bayan, by the Philippine National Commission for Culture and the Arts. So this commission, the NCCA, is the overall policy-making body coordinating and grants-giving agency for the preservation, development, and promotion of Philippine culture and arts. So the award is given to Filipinos belonging to an indigenous or traditional cultural community anywhere in the Philippines who are the forefront of the practice, preservation, and promotion of the nation's traditional folk arts, which in this case is the tinalak weaving. So this is a picture. This is a photo of Lang Dulay. She's the master weaver I was referring to earlier. And however, she passed away last year. But one of the reasons why she was awarded, or why she received that National Artist Award was. The Tiboli women, they're generally known as the dream weavers because the designs of their products, which as you can see behind Lang Dulay, the designs are supposed to come to them in a dream, and so all the designs, these are not just arbitrary ideas that come to them, but come in the form of a dream and then materialized in the cloth. So she's the main proponent of tinalak weaving, and then so tinalak, which is the main product in our social enterprise, is a type of fabric made from abaca. It's a plant indigenous to the Philippines. It's also known as Manila hemp. And it is one of the countries, the tinalak, I actually have a sample in case you want to see how it looks like the actual product. It's one of the country's most iconic indigenous products, and it's handcrafted by the Tiboli women. I think there are other groups who are, other indigenous groups who are doing this, but they're making, or they're using a different kind of fiber. So when you say tinalak, it's really identified with the Tibolis. So it's a labor-intensive process that can actually take several months because the typical swath of tinalak cloth would measure between 6 meters to 12 meters and with a width of about 2 feet. And it comes in a variety of colors. So we have the traditional colors, which is the one on the left, on the upper left-hand corner. That's the traditional color of the tinalak, actually, and it's red, black, and the white. It's actually beige. That's the natural color of the abaca fiber, and then that's the traditional design. The one on the bottom right-hand corner is another variation of the traditional colors. So. And then the other ones, the other designs and the other colors, those are what you would consider the contemporary designs of the tinalak. So the Lang Dulay, the national artist, she was actually supporting the sustaining the traditional colors of the tinalak, but with the changing market demands, people now are more inclined to go for the more bright colors. So you see the green and the red, and then there's actually the one the bottom left that's actually purple and beige, and the different designs as well. And then the one in the middle at the bottom, that's supposed to be beige and black actually. So that's a two-tone color. That cloth can also come in solid colors like solid black or just red. So it really depends on the demand of the market or the customer. So these are just a few of the designs and colors of the tinalak. And these are some of our products. As you can see, you can use the material for envelopes, throw pillows, bags, and eco bags, and organizers. So It can also be used as wall decors and other office accessories. So the initiative, we call it Indie Collab Social Enterprise. The business name is actually a play on the word indigenous and collaboration. So it's indigenous, obviously, because of we're working with indigenous women, the Tiboli women, and we're working together like in a collaborative manner. So we designed the business enterprise as a kind of using the value chain approach. The Tiboli women, for lack of a better term, they're like at the bottom because they're in charge of the production, like the beginning stage of the social enterprise. So they're in charge of producing the tinala cloth, and they're involved in the not only in the weaving process but the dyeing, the tying of the fibers, and all this process. And then the entrepreneur, that's myself. When I started this, I was basically, because I'm based in Manila, so we agreed that I would be more useful if I do the marketing, because I'll be able to tap more or a wider broad of audience, like more markets available in the city, as against to those in the municipality or in Lake Cebu, which is I think a third-class municipality, I think, in the Philippines. So it's really in the low end of the economic bracket. And then we have also the third-party actors or the government agencies and other service providers, which in our original plan, we're supposed to tap them as our as a source of or the service provider to provide us, to assist us in the capacity building component of the social enterprise. So the Tiboli women, so they are they're part in the value chain as well. They are the owners of the product, so they have the inherent expertise and skill set. And then most of them, since they're already involved in weaving, they have the basic tools. And another consequence of this business enterprise that we want to happen as well is for them to use this as a means to pass on their culture to and tradition to their children, because right now with the influence of technology and all that, a lot of the children don't have any more affinity with their own culture, so they would prefer to go for the modern practices. So and then so as I've said earlier, as I'm based in Manila, I'm the one handling the markets, and then so that we can get a better price for the tinalak. And then it's also easier to coordinate with the buyers, and then transport and storage facilities are easily available in Manila as well. For the third-party actors, we have the government agencies and other service providers. We strongly believe and we have seen that the capacity building component of the social enterprise is very much crucial for the success of the project. So we're looking at among the capacity building components that we have identified include the organizational and financial management, values-based training, record keeping and inventory, design and creatives, among others. So you might ask, like, what does like values-based training mean in this case? Like, we've noticed that the women are more the women that we work with are not like, they don't have any like long-term view of what they are doing. So it's mostly like a hand-to-mouth existence, and this has placed them in a vulnerable spot. So we want them to realize that to see that there is a value in what they're doing, and then it's really more than like just the simple producing of the tinalak. And then finally, the new actor here, this was actually added because as we started as we went on with our social enterprise, we realized that there were like skills or technical skills that were missing with women who are mostly based in the rural areas. But the point here is still that it's not that they're going to be excluded in the whole process, but to just just make them focus on what they're good at, and then pass on pass on to another group the other stage in the process. So to be more specific, this was the production of let's say bags, because the Tiboli women are not really exposed to like good quality and modern designs. They're usually still doing the traditional products that they have been doing before. So they're not able to command a better price as well. But then we were able to meet a group of single mothers whose expertise actually are using tinalak, and they're actually using it for their products. So that's what we did. We sort of laid out that portion of the process to them. So we passed it on to them. So the lessons learned. Well, I started with the business and development challenge, because the project itself started from there. The bid challenge is a business plan competition that offers entrepreneurs the chance to carry out their business ideas through mentoring and financial assistance. So that's where we found out that capacity building was crucial. Like the trainers, they have to be physically present as well. And then we have government support through the relevant agencies that they should be able to provide the capacity building, that we should also tap them. And then the financial resources here is mainly because the area is not accessible. So the transportation cost is really a huge burden for us, and it's actually one of the reasons that the prices are driven up, because the transportation cost is very high. And then in terms of the lessons from our actual engagement with the Tiboli women in particular, so it's one of the as I've mentioned earlier, like for them to be trained to see and think in the long term, not to impose on them, but for them to realize that it is important that they have a long-term plan as well, and to see beyond what's the present, and then this will also make them less vulnerable to middlemen. And then financial resources, though it need not be prioritized over other needs. It's really just it's important in the sense that it will help us jumpstart the initiative. And then we have also learned that there is really a big potential for the product, because there is growing interest now on everything indigenous, and the product itself, based from what we have seen, like when we participate in trade fairs, that it has its uniqueness, evokes like certain exclusivity, and that a lot of people really want to have it. But it's at the same time, production is also very vulnerable, highly vulnerable to disturbances in weather patterns. So this is something that we need to focus on as well. So these are basically our plans. So our next steps for our group to utilize and maximize the strength of each of the actors in the value chain, that capacity building must really be integrated into the overall project implementation, and then tap resources that are available, especially from the government agencies, and then leveraging and partnering with organizations as well that are engaged in similar initiatives. And then we will also continue participating in bazaars, trade fairs, trade expos, and then scale up the marketing and promotion of our product, the tinalak especially. But the Tibolis also have other products that we're also marketing. And then finally, to be able to, we would want that what we are doing be able to contribute to what was discussed earlier, the social solidarity economy, and then and be able to see that there is really there is indeed a future for partnerships of this kind. So we would like to be we intend to be documenting the best practices and successes as well as lessons learned in our social enterprise. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hashimoto. I think next we will have to ask her, oh, where can we buy those beautiful clothes and handicrafts? Oh, we can talk about it later. So next, I would like to invite Professor Makino from College of Foreign Studies, Kansai Gaidai University. Sorry. So she will be presenting with, we have just listened is 2 cases, one in India and one in the Philippines. And now Professor Makino actually will present a framework on how we can see or judge some of the different SEs and how they are doing, and are they actually involving all these important values and important areas that we have to look into. So this framework will be very helpful for us to actually analyze the different functions and success of different SEs, social enterprise. So Professor Makino, yours. Thank you. Sorry.
Should use this to make my hands free. Excuse me.
Yes, just move
ahead. Okay, this way. Good afternoon. My name is Makino. I'm from Kansai Gaidai University, Osaka, Japan. Today's presentation, my presentation topic is here, social economy and sustainable rural community development, an analytical framework. We have lots of experiences and case studies in Japan, in rural area, but many of them have been scattering in various disciplines and areas and so on and so on. So it is difficult to find out the common aspect and the study to be learned and how to utilize their experience and to make them know to outside Japan, kind of. So we came up with this idea that we need some analytical framework to synthesize our experience and various case studies. And this study drew on our previous study. Myself and my colleague, Professor Kitajima, and this is our previous study. This is a part of ICSM study by MS network. And we try to provide a typology of Japanese rural social enterprises by historical origin and driving forces in the light of the EMS analytical framework on social enterprise. As you may know, the EMS framework is rooted deep in cooperative tradition in Europe, which is common to Japanese experience. And it identifies social enterprises by 9 criteria. Each, three in economic and entrepreneurial dimension, 3 in social dimensions, and three in governance structure. And we followed this framework and tried to make the characteristics of social enterprises in Japan in rural context. And EMS identifies another important thing. It's about social innovation. Social enterprises are an agent, is an agent of social innovation and social entrepreneurship. And when we think about emergence of Japanese rural social enterprises, we can say that it's a collective response of the crisis of rural community. We have a lot of problems facing rural areas today, aging and excess depopulation, which in Japanese we call kaso, and resultant loss in production capacity, income, and various functions such as environmental functions like preserving natural resources and disaster prevention. Social area, we have a lot of caring function, cooperation, and education, and so on and so on. So these kind of functions have been considerably weakened because of these microeconomic and demographic conditions. So in addition to that, we have failure of agricultural policy of the government, also inability and decline of traditional agricultural cooperatives. So in this background, we identified three types of rural social enterprises, which we may call in our study community cooperatives. This is a generic name appearing in some of those literature. It's not a legal formal name because we don't have any legal framework to accommodate social enterprises. So this is that. And these three types are, one is specialized single functional or sectoral social enterprises like organic farming, CSA, community supported agriculture-based cooperatives. Potentially, we would include now going on, we have renewable energy cooperatives. And the second type is a kind of umbrella coordination organizations. We can call them community development corporations. Again, this is a kind of generic name. And these have evolved from community farming. We would explain this later a little bit. And the other type, two types here. The second type is based on autonomous community association in various area. This is village level organization. In community, by community, we have a rather clear territorial idea, concept, which is village before great municipal merger, which took place in the late 1990s and early 2000. So this is the village before this merger. So the number of villages has increased quite a lot, but still people recognize this is the kind of unit of our community. And also this is, this overlaps with elementary school district. So this is our perception of the community. And this second type of, second category of community, social enterprises are multifunctional, and these are serving directly the community at large. And we found some common characteristics of rural social enterprises. The first two is very common. These are created by the initiative of a group of citizens in the community. But the question is, who are citizens? Who are a group of citizens? It's not just the number. And the second, sharing the common goal of community revitalization and development. And the next three is perhaps important characteristics of rural enterprises in Japan. They are strongly oriented to sustainability transition and also affected strongly by the thinking of indigenous development, which became very popular in the 1970s in Japan. And these provide various types of quasi-public community goods, we would say community goods, by discovering and mobilizing community, as well as external resources and assets of broader type, not only physical, financial, but also human, natural, cultural, and social capital. And in addition, it seems to demonstrate an evolving model, changing, constantly changing model of self-governance from inside the community. So although we followed in our previous study to fit our cases in the EMS framework, we had some difficulties in doing this because in that approach we found a kind of lack in holistic sustainable development perspective. And then there's a very microeconomic view of economic agents which doesn't fit the reality of rural community. In rural area, we have many different kind of people and different kind of organizations. Sometimes we call nested organizations, layered and interacting with each other. And the framework is rather static. So we found difficulty in describing the dynamic nature of rural institutions. So that's why we feel we need some framework. So to place our empirical result and other studies in an analytical framework that enables us to examine the role of rural social enterprises in a broader perspective of sustainable development and also social economy. That's our purpose. And talking about sustainability, the transition towards sustainability strives to bring the economic system and the society towards a new equilibrium that is environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable. The social economy, on the other hand, encompasses organizations that put the pursuit of social aims at the heart of their economic activity. But there have been a kind of a remarkable lack. That's our personal opinion. In the holistic perspective of sustainable development, as you may know, according to the famous statement, the definition of sustainable development by Brundtland Commission of UN in 1989, it says sustainable development is the development that meets the end of present generation without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. What does it mean? It means that two things, equitable and balanced development. Equitable in terms of equity within the same generation, and equity among between current and future generations, and balanced in terms of economic, social, and environmental spheres. We say sometimes prosperity, people, and planet. And they are not separate target of analysis. They are interrelated and not separable thing. So this is our holistic perspective. Today, partly in response to the newly adopted Sustainable Development Goals set up in 2015, aimed at the target year of 2030. Researchers of social economy and social enterprise now seeks to question and feed in a new way of convergence between social economy and the transition towards sustainable development. So our purpose is first to find out some existing framework focusing on both aspects, which can accommodate both. And there are some focus about sustainability. One is sustainability requires maintaining wealth or stock of capital, resources, which provides flows of services for human well-being over time. And we need extended view of capital, includes both tangible and intangible asset, or marketed or non-marketed asset, typically physical, human, natural, social capital. And also we need to emphasize the role of institutions and its dynamics. So as Professor Singh pointed out, institutional analysis is very important, and we need frameworks that reflect the diverse context and complex set of factors influencing the process and its outcomes. So we found out some previous existing frameworks which we can draw on. One is Sustainable Livelihood Framework developed by, that's DFID, Department of International Development, UK, or other researchers in development and poverty issues. And this is actually became much utilized recently in rural wealth creation approach and American rural context. And also the other one is more on institutional analysis. First, we explored in institutional analysis and development framework by Eleanor Ostrom and others, which is also elaborated by a community enterprise emergence model by Diochon, which is based on endogenous development approach in the Canadian context. And basic framework is very similar in major components and their dynamics. So this is the simplest version of sustainable development framework, because this is useful having very similar components here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components in this framework. The first one is the external environment, which is exogenous to the community or the level of analysis we are concerned. So macroeconomic, demographic, and other conditions which affect the community. But this is not about the community. Mostly this is to solve poverty issues in rural area. So actually there's no word found out in this framework. The word community appears only as the level of locality. It's not the real community thing, but under this condition, people identify their belongings, I should say livelihood asset in the form of 5 types of capital, and then transforming structures and process contains structures which are organizations in this area. And processes are that affecting the people in this area, regulation, rule, and so on, so on. And then interacting with this structure and process, people set out livelihood strategies and then produces some outcome. This again feeds back to assets and so on, so on. So this is the basic framework we wanted to use. So I'd like to skip the details of the analysis. Perhaps some handouts are distributed to focus on the other approaches. So basically the same, but IAD framework by Ostrom and Diochon, they are more focused on the action area, people's action, workings of the community, actors and their decisions and actions. So this is action area focused on institutional aspect, which we feel also very important. And we just skip this. The proposed framework from our study is very similar in structure to rural wealth creation approach proposed by Pender and Rather, which is based upon sustainable development framework. And also we learned from institutional analysis literature. And our scheme compromises 4 components: the environment, external environment, economic, natural, and institutional context, and community assets, action area, which consists of actors and actors' decision and actions, and outcomes. So this is a picture, and perhaps it might be better for you to look at the handout. So on top, we have external conditions. In Japanese context, the most important thing is perhaps the declining and aging population. And we share the difficulty, macroeconomic trends and shocks, market conditions, natural phenomena, including disasters and climate change. Disasters are very serious, getting more and more serious in our community too. Sometimes we call for resilient communities, but resiliency and sustainability is very close to each other. They are indispensable thing. Law, regulations, and policies, these are the conditions outside the community. And the other 3 areas, community assets, action area, and outcomes, are kind of endogenous aspect of the community. And we utilize this kind of community assets. So human, natural, social, financial, physical assets, and I gave some examples and concept here. Physical capital is stock of produced capital goods as well as stock of durable goods and infrastructure, financial, stock of money and other financial assets, natural, stock of natural and environmental resources. Cultural stock is very important, especially historical assets in Japanese rural areas, stock of heritage and practices that reflect values and identity rooted in place. These things, human capital is also important. This is a stock of human capabilities of individuals, but also the stock of collective knowledge, innovation, and ideas are included. And social capital, I think I don't need to mention to that. Okay? So, given this assets, we have actors and make decisions and actions, and we want to call this action area as social economy here. Okay? So here we have conventional cooperatives like agricultural cooperatives, forest cooperatives, as well as newly developed one, community-based, community-oriented social enterprises, new type. So these are newly emerged social enterprises representing, well, I could say internal dynamics within the existing cooperative sector. They are addressing pressing needs of the community. And we also have, okay, something odd. We also have local government and not-for-profit organizations. These affect provision of collective goods, regulation of the uses of private assets, and so on, that influence private market behavior. Sorry, I have some duplication. And we have other factors, actors, organizations, and individuals in the private sector in rural community. We can say that it may also constitute social economy because local business is typically small based on local assets, particularly natural and cultural assets, and they are community-oriented. Traditional organizations include neighborhood organizations, as well as those governing common pool resources. We have some name here, the institution governing local common pool resources as property was. This is legalized in our local autonomous acts. Okay. So in our perspective, social economy is not the simple aggregation of independent social enterprises, but it's the interaction and synergies among them, which is important for rural economy. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm spending too much time. So, okay, so I just focus on the innovation, social innovation part, and hopefully I'll finish in a moment. Okay, so previously we had individual livelihood strategies which failed, and no more available. Urban migration, seasonal employment, employment in local manufacturing, side business, part-time, farming kind of thing. Today, it is more about entrepreneurship. Okay? So different kind of entrepreneurship is appearing. One is necessity-based, one is opportunity-based. Some people say that necessity-based is less innovative, but we don't think so. These two are important aspects of innovation and entrepreneurship in rural areas. And community cooperatives, newly emerged social enterprises, one of our focus is the type of community development cooperation especially, can play a most significant role in making important decisions in forming strategies, investment, production for community at large, and influencing the patterns of consumption and lifestyles, and contribute to other functions of the community. It is leading and coordinating and networking role organization in the community. They are working in partnership with local government and external organizations. So in our picture, social innovation is shown in the figure as shaded arrow, thick arrow connecting actors' decision to outcome. And we also need collective entrepreneurship. In rural community, entrepreneurship is not just individual. We have a kind of social entrepreneurship which take place as a group of individuals, organizations, formal and informal, which we want to call collective entrepreneurship. And we have several examples of this kind of innovation, but I think it's time to stop here, and hopefully we will introduce our experience later. Is it okay, or should I finish? But anyway, okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Professor Makino. This is a very interesting section, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So I would like to invite all the speakers to come to the stage and take a seat, and then we'll first take a few questions. So I think we don't have a lots of time for questions, so I will give this privilege to our floor. So any burning questions? Anyone wants to, you know, have some more understanding on the speaker's talk? Just hold on a second. Let's wait for Professor Makino. So your question for?
Yes, I have a question for Yasmin. Yes, I understand that you're doing a very best to try to preserve the culture, your Filipino woman's culture. But what I want to know is, how do you make yourself market competitive? Because I understand all these handicrafts are handmade, they're time consuming, and they need a lot of efforts, and like you said, the transportation fee might be expensive, so the consumers, they might choose to purchase like a machinery made product instead, because it's cheaper, it's faster. So how do you make yourself market competitive?
Hello. Actually, what we're trying to do here is we are not really intending to produce it in big volumes. So it will really come out more expensive. So and to be able to address the market competition is the thing is it is unique in itself. So it's artisanal in that sense, and we believe that anything that has its own inherent artisanal beauty, it will naturally command a higher price. So the thing is, what we try to do is to explain to them the process, like especially when we join like bazaars and people are surprised why the price is so high, why it's so expensive. So we tell them that we don't produce it in big volumes, and there is also the fact that the process is really labor intensive, and there's no other way of producing it in such a way that it will make it cheaper to produce. And we also try to share with them the impact on the community as well. So there is that matter of their being able. I mean, it's it's sharing with them the reality of the whole situation in the community, that if you support this, you're able to help. I mean, it sounds like cliche, but it's really true. So we just try to make sure that they see the situation, that they're able to understand why we have to price it as such. So, yeah.
Can I just add a little bit of my own experience? Because we also import some of the handcraft from the Philippines, and actually for the people who when they actually get the products, they will see the difference. You know, it's nothing compared to machine-made things, and you can see all the works and the durability of the product is very different. So I think we also need to emphasize to people, you know, the values or the something that you cannot be repeated by some of the machines. I mean, because some of the baskets that we import, and actually locally there is another company who like our basket, and they actually go to China and try to ask them to produce something exactly the same or copying the model. But then we see it and it's totally different things. And when the two baskets put side by side, people will know that, okay, this handcraft basket is much more different, is much more beautiful, and you can tell how much work is being put in this. This is called, it's every handicraft is actually an art piece, and it should have its value. And I also think that for the customer, they also have, well, lots of people who actually understand and value this kind of handicrafts. I'm not sure if there's another questions from the floor, but I have a question that I want to ask myself first. So this question is for Professor Singh. I think your model is very interesting and it's very on the ground and helping a lot of farmers. But I also have a question is, how do people do the pricing? I mean, because as you know, the price makes a very big difference on how much benefits actually give back to the farmers and how much benefits actually, you know, diverted to the customer and things like that. So do they have a pricing strategy or policy to fix the price, and how the fixing of the price can it be a collective input from, you know, different stakeholder?
I think right now the pricing is not the issue. Issue is availability at right time and right quality products. So they're selling mostly market-based products. They're not producing anything in-house. They're just aggregating from different companies, good quality products from good companies, and selling to the farmer through the franchises. The additional thing they're doing is that farmers should be enabled to buy well. So they are also buying farmers' produce and trying to sell it to good buyers, so passing on a better price to the farmer.
So how they actually fix the price to buy the produce from the farmers?
Yeah, that in some cases they have contract farming, where you tell the farmer before he or she grows a crop that if you grow this kind of variety, we'll buy at this price. In some others, they just go by the market price-based price. Whatever buyer offers, you bring it back to the farmer and say farmer is willing to sell at that. Then also in India, we have another system of some crops having minimum support price, where the government of India has certain agencies like Food Corporation of India or Cotton Corporation of India, which buy at minimum price which government declares at the beginning of the season. So that becomes the benchmark for others to follow. So price would not go below that. Government steps in and starts buying. But that is implemented only for 3 or 4 crops. The rest is more market-based.
Thank you. So I also have one more question for Professor Makino, if you don't mind. So your framework is quite useful, but I just want to see, because we have on the stage have also from people from India and also from the Philippines. Do you think your framework can be applicable to so because Japan is a very well-developed economy, but say, for example, for some of the developing countries, can they actually adopt the same framework in the rural area, or do we need lots of adjustments?
Thank you. Actually, this is a little bit far away. What we want to do first is to synthesize on Japanese experience using this kind of framework. And what I missed in my last presentation is actual examples of social innovation, which is to connect on utilizing, mobilizing, discovering local community resources to find out a way to sell new products, a new market, and especially very important is urban-rural exchange and cooperation. Because identifying community asset doesn't just mean that you find out good things. You want to know what is lacking too. And even in terms of utilization, what faces Japanese rural community is not the overuse of resources, rather underutilization, say abandonment of farmland, forest kind of thing. This again, important thing, and I think the same could happen in countries like Korea and Taiwan. Okay? So we have a lot of abandoned resources, underutilized. And because of the aging and the depopulation, these are just without utilized, they are just there. So when we talk about this kind of utilization, you can see both. And also, you can combine some external resources. And this is again, in terms of exchange and cooperation with the outside world. So the community we perceive is now not the traditional community, but rather new types of community which have some interaction with outside world. This exchange is very important. It sometimes go beyond the national borders. We have some exchanges, and say perhaps you, can I speak a little bit? Maybe too much, maybe second round I would talk. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions from the floor? If not, I think we will have to close the section because we are running out of time and it's already 4:30. But any other things that maybe Professor Makino still wanted to share with us?
If you are interested in this issue, I am more than pleased to send you more information about what we have studied.
Yeah, because there's lots of details in the PowerPoint.
Right.
Sorry that we don't have enough time.
Complicated issue, so we ourselves found difficulty in organizing this because most of those are informal, unknown to the world, and perhaps you know about KK, community supported agriculture, which is based on the experience of organic agriculture in Japan, and so on. So we would be very happy to do this.
Well, thank you very much for joining the session, and thank you to the three speakers for your very interesting and innovative sharing. And thank you for coming to the SE session here. Thank you.